Oh, so interesting. Yeah.
Okay. We are live. So Ashley, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give everyone a synopsis of your
Great.
book. Hold on, I should hold it up. If only you could see the junk I have over here, but then also I've got this beautiful, gorgeous copy right here. So The Push is a psychological drama about the making and breaking of a family and a woman whose experience of motherhood is nothing at all what she hoped for and everything she feared. Blythe Connor is determined that she will be the warm, comforting mother to her new baby Violet that she herself never had. But in the thick of motherhood's exhausting early days, Blythe becomes convinced that something is wrong with her daughter. Later, when life as they know it changed in almost an instant, the devastating fallout forces Blythe to face the truth. I'm so happy to welcome the author of this book, Ashley Audrain. Did I say your last name right, Ashley?
You did. Thank you, Tracy. You did.
Is joining me now to talk about this book that has been captivating all of our viewers. And the first thing I have to say is congratulations, because The Push is a bestseller. Ashley, how does that feel?
Thank you. Very surreal and an absolute dream come true. And I kept feeling like somebody was going to call me and say, we made a mistake on the list. We counted wrong, but nobody called. So it's good.
It's going to be incredible. It's amazing. And, you know, you have to look at Ashley's story because she's actually from the other side of book publishing. And now she is the author that is hot. So I won't get into this now because I want to get into the book, but that's amazing. You know, at one point in the book, Blythe is just breaking down the mechanics of being a mom, the grueling, banal monotony of it all. And she speaks to a mother's body and sort of the objectification of a mother's body, because we're in many ways reduced to just a body. We breastfeed, we pick up stuff, we carry kids, we clean, we cook. And there is this societal expectation that we should sort of lean into all of this stuff, and that it's not necessarily the dirty, gritty, boring thing that it is. So I guess my question for you is, why do you think this idea, this romanticized idea of motherhood still exists? And how much pressure does this put on women?
Yeah, it was important to me to write those scenes and those glimpses into how she felt physically about her body, because I feel like, we don't really talk about that often, and we don't really acknowledge that often about, she describes herself feeling like sort of this used barge or like a used ship, it's sort of, only needed for the sort of the mechanical things that she can give her family at times. And yeah, like you said, I think it can feel a lot like that, especially when you have, such young kids. But yes, it's so interesting to me that, we still, in this day and age, we still have this pressure, I think, to like live up to this expectation of how mothers should be and how women should be. And, for me, I think it really starts quite young. I think from a very young age, I think, women and like females and males, I think, are sort of taught, even as us being little girls, that there is such a tight association, between womanhood and motherhood. It's like, if you are going to be, if you're a woman, you are going to be a mother, and you're going to like being a mother, and it is going to be natural for you, and you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to have an instinct. And I even think a lot about the ways that we speak to women. And, I do this all the time and had done this all the time before I started, being more aware of it. You would see somebody, a young woman who hasn't had children yet, holding another woman's baby. And you might say to them, oh, motherhood looks good on you. You're going to be a natural. Like, those words just come out of our mouth. That is the narrative we're just used to it. And so, there is this pressure, whether we mean for it to be a pressure or not. I think that women have to expect that they're going to rise to the challenge of motherhood in a very, natural, instinctual way. And yeah, it's interesting that, we've come so far as women in so many other ways. We really have. I think especially in the past, decade or the past 5 years, I think a lot of women feel that. We've had very important movements around that. And yet there still seems to be this very sort of old-fashioned feeling expectation about motherhood that we just can't seem to really shake, I don't think.
Absolutely. And that's, part of the reason why I always try and keep it real when parents just have kids, any parents, could be men, could be women, could be anyone, but I'm always very honest about what my journey was like. And some people can relate to it and others can't. But while I was reading your book, I felt this immense sadness at times because the loneliness and isolation of being that mom home alone with the baby. And I didn't even take a full year with both of mine. I took 6 months with my first, and I took 6 weeks with my second, which I was even worried about. But I felt this, and that's a whole other story. I felt this real pressure to get back to studio.
Yeah.
And I just remember sitting there. I suffered from postpartum depression after my first baby. And I remember sitting there at the window, like just rocking him and looking out and just feeling like somebody save me. Like, is there anyone out there that can help me? I didn't want to leave the house. I was afraid of him crying. I was a mess. So I just felt very bored and very lonely, but also incredibly busy because there's always something to be done. You wrote this book when your son was 6 months old. Did I get that right? So
yeah.
Did you feel any of that isolation as a mom? Because not everyone did. Like my sister did not have that. My sister was like happy as could be with her home with her babies and she loved it. But did you feel any of that isolation?
I definitely did. I can definitely relate to that. I can really relate to that feeling of just thinking like, this isn't very fun. Some days, like I am not having fun. And I could see other women, having fun, like enjoying it because you're right. Like some women really do, like genuinely just love that. And I remember thinking, I had a sort of a different situation with my son because when he was 2 weeks old, we found out that he was quite ill. He had a chronic illness. He still has a chronic illness. And so that was a real shock to all of us. We didn't expect that. And I was already sort of trying to figure out, how to be a mom, and then to try to figure out how to be a mother of a child who has an illness, who isn't well, living at Sick Kids Hospital and sort of within the walls of that hospital, trying to figure out how to do it all was just added challenge. And I really remember thinking, at that time, like it was I almost found it sort of hard to be around my friends who were really getting on with motherhood and really enjoying it at that time, just because it was so different, from the experience that I was having. And I think, there's a scene in the book where, Blythe, who was really feeling isolated and feeling a lot of loneliness, in her journey with motherhood, she goes to lunch with some other mom friends who have babies who are her age. And, as we all do, they're at lunch kind of talking about sort of the surface stuff that we tend to talk about, which is also fun to discuss, like, the sleep schedules and the baby gear and all that stuff. And she, in that moment, is just looking for one of them to show her a little crack, somebody just to sort of say, actually, this is really how I'm feeling. And nobody does. And she's hungry for that because she's looking for some sense of validation of her own experience and somebody to kind of normalize how she's really feeling. And I think it can be, and she leaves the lunch, no one says anything. She leaves the lunch, pushing her stroller, sort of staring at the baby, feeling worse than she did before, before she went there. And I think that's something a lot of women can relate to. It feels like, I think sometimes, we the whole community of moms and mom friends and baby groups, it is wonderful and it serves such a purpose, and thank God for it. But I think sometimes, we sort of look for someone to just take the conversation a little bit further, to share just a little bit more so that we can kind of validate deeper feelings that we might be having. And it's really hard to do. It's really hard to be the first person to kind of share that or say that. It's just how it is.
I was the Blythe. I definitely tried to step into that vulnerability and I got nothing, crickets. Everybody was just like, this baby is the best thing. And I'm like, all mine does is sleep and poo. And I'm really sad. And I feel like I was so scarred from that initial experience that I actually didn't want to hang out with moms at all. Like if you were a single person, you can come over. Like I want to hear about your life. I don't want to talk to any moms. And it took me a while to get over that and be like, no. there's a real mom community out there that will, like, they can hang and they're going to be real and they're going to keep it real. Took me a while to find them though. So
Yeah,
I
I agree. You got to
loved that
find your
scene.
people. Oh, good.
Loved
Thank
that scene in the book where
Thanks.
she's like, it's kind of hard. And they're like, yeah, but it's the best thing in the world. Like, oh.
Yeah. Not what you want to hear. Not what you want to hear. Yeah. Yeah.
Blythe's backstory, so, is told through memories of childhood and her mother's childhood. So do you feel that Blythe's mother was scarred by her childhood, and that trauma was sort of inherited? And how does this affect how Blythe feels about being a mother herself? Because she's got some
Yeah.
internal things to work out, doesn't she?
She really does. And it's interesting, when I sat down to write this book, I really just wanted to write about, one woman's journey, her expectations with motherhood and that not meeting what she wanted, and I was really sort of writing about this family, her husband and her daughter. And as I was trying to get to know Blythe more and really exploring her experience in motherhood, I sort of felt like I couldn't really understand her without understanding the mother she came from. And then I started writing about her mom, whose name is Cecilia, and her experience. And then I sort of had the same feeling about her. I wanted to know the mother that she came from, who is Etta in the book. And so that's sort of how I sort of ended up, exploring these three generations of women. But I really, liked thinking through that and really exploring, that chain of mothers that we come from and how we learn to mother. Or not, in the case of Blythe, who just didn't have that example, in her own family to look to. And, I did some more research and sort of reading about just the idea of intergenerational trauma, in the many different forms that can take. And I think, Blythe was very aware that she had this traumatic past. She's very aware of kind of these, these glimpses into the history that her mom and her grandmother had. And I sort of think as humans, we sometimes, when we know these things about our past, we sort of tend to do one of two things. We sort of fight as strong as we can to not, to break that cycle, to be different and, to treat our family different and be a different kind of mother. Or we feel like we have no chance, we feel like we have no chance of breaking that cycle. We see this in many different, forms of people's experience and addiction and, so many other things.
Yeah.
And so I think Blythe is really caught in the middle there. It's almost like the more she knows, the worse off she is, because she has so much anxiety about being different, but not knowing if she has it in her. And I think, we all sort of have that, we are all composed of this mix of nature and nurture, and we learn that in how to parent too. You probably feel this too, but like, we feel ourselves repeating, the cycles or the behaviors of our own mother. I feel like that with my kids all the time, where I think, oh my gosh, I'm doing exactly what my mom did, or I sound exactly like my mother, and then I see my daughter too, she's so little, she's only 3, but I can already see, the things I'm teaching her and the things that she's mimicking to me. I mean, you must see that with your daughter too, but so yeah, I really wanted to kind of look at that. I think especially with sort of mothers and daughters, there's something there that is just a little more emotional and a little heavier in us all.
Yeah, there is definitely something there in the mother-daughter thing, which why it was particularly heartbreaking, this whole Violet Blythe friction. But you mentioned nature versus nurture, and I really do want to get into that. When children, I've had these conversations with my husband before, and it's like, oh, I just want to make sure the kids do not turn out to be, like addicts or like, we're going to try and do everything in my power. And my husband would say to me, what makes you think you have control over what happens? I'm like, but I'm going to give them the foundation and the values and the belief systems. And he's like, and then are you going to watch all the friends that they hang out with? And then you're going to follow him after school. And I'm like, dude, like, isn't there something we can put in these children that will be like a, surefire? And he's like, no. And so it's an interesting conversation, this nature versus nurture. Sometimes you do everything right and things still go wrong with the next generation. So how much blame do you think lies with the way they are raised, or is it nature? Like, do you feel like there is sort of room for both?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like I've had those same conversations as well with my partner. But it's, oh gosh, yeah, I think the reality is that it really is both. And I think, I think something that has really fascinated me just about parenthood or motherhood in general is the idea that, you know, so many of us do it. So many of us, you know, have kids and decide that we want to be mothers, and yet none of us know who that child is going to be. Like, we
That's
can't
true.
possibly know who that kid is going to be. I mean, we are really signing up for so much unknown when we're signing up to be a parent. Like, we have hopes and dreams and wishes of who that person is going to be, but it is actually entirely out of our control in so many ways. You know, we know each person is a combination of, you know, their genes, their DNA, their nature, and their nurture. You know, we have some influence, you know, we can influence some behavior, but that combination is like, you know, we can't possibly know. And so that, I think, always gave me sort of a bit of anxiety about parenthood. Like, you know, I have no reason to think that I would have a child who would, you know, have some kind of, you know, evil side to them or something, you know,
Yeah.
in them, but there's that little seed of thought, you know. And it was funny, another journalist actually had been reading my book, and then was at the playground with her son, who was 4, and she said he's never done this before, but they were at the playground and the book was kind of on her mind, and he had leaned over to a stranger, like a kid he didn't know in the playground, and bit him so hard in the shoulder. And she said she was horrified. And she said she had this moment where she thought, oh my God, where did he learn how to do that? He's never done that before. And she's apologizing for him. And, you know, it wasn't a very good time to be reading The Push, but she had that moment where she thought, like, is there something wrong with him? Of course, that is a totally normal behavior, you know, and so many kids do that kind of thing. But it is that we have that instinct to worry about, you know, who that child's going to be. And I think, and, you know, in writing Violet, you know, something that I always think about, you know, when you listen to the news or hear the news, or we're watching, you know, that kind of thing, and you hear about somebody who has done something unthinkable, you know, somebody who has harmed another person or you know, worse, you know, we have this, you know, natural psychological curiosity about who that person is. But my mind actually always goes to that person's parents.
Yeah.
You know, and not in a judgmental way, but in a curious way. Like, did they know that their child was capable of something like that? And if they did, you know, when did they know that? And how did they know that? And what is their responsibility to that child? You know, knowing that, those are all kind of sort of moral questions that I've always been curious in. And that's sort of where this idea of kind of Violet sort of came from.
Really good. Yeah, I love it. You know, you also explore the pressures of parenthood in this book, and I really want to talk about Fox.
Yeah.
I was really mad at Fox. I don't know if I was irrationally mad at Fox. I was really upset with Fox. I understood he was trying to protect his daughter. I did not feel he was supportive enough. I know Blythe might have been you know, she was a tricky narrator, and, you know, I'm sure that maybe I had some doubt from time to time as to what she was going through, but actually 95% of me was on Blythe. Like, I felt what Blythe was going through was real. And I didn't understand why he couldn't be a little bit more supportive. I felt like he had blinders on. So when you wrote his character, were you writing him in a way that, like, did you sympathize with him? Could you see his side of things, or were you irrationally angry at him like I was?
I was irrationally angry like you were.
Okay, good.
With you. And it's actually funny because in the earlier versions of The Push, like the drafts that I was working on, you know, my partner had read one, and he said, you know, Fox he's really like, he's not very likable. Like, he's too bad. He's too awful. And I thought, oh, you're just saying that because you're also a man and a husband and a father. And I didn't listen to him. But actually, it was one of the number one piece of feedback that my editors had when the book got acquired and I started working with publishers, you know, and you go through a revision with them, a very, very helpful, you know, thorough revision. And their number one piece of feedback was, you know, Fox cannot be as terrible as he is. So if you think he's bad now, he was way worse. He was way worse in the earlier draft.
Oh, he was.
But yeah, like, just awful. So this is a better version of Fox we are getting. However, I totally agree with you. And I think that, you know, it's funny because I don't have a lot of, you know, sympathy for him. You know, I feel like he essentially, what he's doing is sort of gaslighting her. You know, he does not want her truth. You know, Blythe's truth is so inconvenient for him as the father and as the husband that he does not want to hear it. He does not have time for it. It does not fit the narrative of the life that he feels he is owed. as a
Yeah.
man and as a husband and as a father. And so he shuts her down.
Yeah.
He doesn't make any space or any, allowance for the way she is feeling. And we see how tragically, dangerous that is, and how much that affects her. There are some readers and some people who have said to me, sort of what you sort of touched on this, that, he is a terrible partner.
Mm.
Is he a good father?
Mm.
Is he defending his daughter? Is he doing everything in his power to make sure that, his daughter is not seen in a way that he doesn't want her to be, this image saddled, for the rest of her life? Is he
Yeah.
trying to give his daughter a fighting chance at being a better person and having, a normal life, even though he might know that there is something a little wrong with her? And what do we owe our children in that circumstance? Those are heavy, I think, tough questions. And can you be a terrible partner and a good father? Is
Yeah.
there room for that? And so, yeah, I think that Fox is, complex in that way. I think somebody had said to me, and a reader had said to me, that they would love to read the whole book from Fox's perspective, to see like what his intentions were, and kind of the way that his behavior was. But it's interesting, because so much of Blythe, we know, is because of the societal expectations that have been put on her. Society has taught her that she is going to have this certain experience of motherhood, or that she should.
Yeah.
And Fox, in a way, is sort of also a product of that. In a way, society has sort of taught him what he should expect in a mother, and sort of what, the kind of wife and mother that, he should feel sort of entitled to. And so, yeah, I'm with you that I am in your camp with Fox. But there are some questions there, I think, about,
Yes. Ooh,
that.
really good questions, actually, for sure.
Mm.
Okay, speaking of questions, I'm going to go to a viewer question. Okay, without giving anything away, I can't believe it ended like that. Is a sequel in the works? That's Sarah from our Facebook group. I know you're writing another book, but is it a sequel?
It's not a sequel. So I'm not writing a sequel. I am writing another book, but it's all new characters and all new story. And I hadn't even thought about a sequel for this book until readers have sort of been asking me that, because it does end on a sort of ambiguous note. So I don't know, I guess never say never. I mean, it's interesting to think of what, how the story could carry on, different
Yeah.
perspectives we could see. The life of Violet might be interesting to see. So I don't know, we'll have to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I give a lot of props to artists and creatives who know when to end a story and just leave it. Like, I know, and I understand this need to have more. But I'd like to see what your brain comes up with next. Maybe we're on Mars. Who knows? Like, you have the freedom to go wherever you want now. Like, this is a bestseller. So why wouldn't you just, go wherever you want?
Thank you.
Okay, this is another one. I feel that in different circumstances, Blythe and Gemma would have been friends. Oh, me too. I liked Gemma a lot. I felt like she was fooling herself, but I liked her.
Yeah.
Did you feel that when you were writing this book? Like, even though it was a fake friendship, it was a real friendship.
Yeah.
Based on, you know what I mean?
Yes, I love that question. Yes, because I really liked Gemma as well. And I felt like I really loved writing their friendship, and it really was painful for me to take them to the place that they got to, because I think there was something quite genuine there, and there was something quite tender, I think, in that friendship. And Blythe had not had a friend who was a mom like that before. That was sort of her, even though it was in a strange context, of course, but she hadn't had that connection with another mother yet. And I think, she was desperate for somebody to see her as, the good mother who could like give the advice and, share those gentle moments with her. And she just never got that, and Gemma brings that to her. And yeah, I loved kind of going down that road with them both. And I think you're right. I think Gemma was kidding herself, through a lot of that, but she also was a mother trying to kind of, figure things out and kind of reaching out. And so, yeah, I think their friendship was, it was special in a strange sort of way. Yeah. And I really enjoyed writing it.
It really was. Listen, I'm going to end with the last question, which is, what do you hope readers take away from this book? And I feel like we've sort of covered it, because it's nuance on top of nuance on top of nuance. And that is my favorite. I like when, you know, we can peel back layers. But for you, what would you like readers to take away?
You know, there's really sort of, I think, two things. You know, one is that, you know, this is sort of an answer that sort of just is fitting of the times, but, you know, this is fiction, it's a novel. And I think we all, I love hearing from readers who say, this took me away for a couple days out of the pandemic, out of pandemic life at home with kids. I mean, I feel like as a writer, you really want to hear that from readers. So I'm grateful if it just gives people a moment to kind of get out of their heads, first of all. But I think in terms of like what people are taking away, you know, I think that I hope it's a book that really makes people think twice about the conversations that they're having with women in their lives, you know, and the conversations they're having with mothers, the questions they are asking mothers, and really sort of seeing, you know, the power that there is in making kind of space to validate and to normalize, you know, experiences that do fall outside of the norm that we consider, and how damaging it can be if we don't, you know. So really kind of making space for those other experiences from others, making people feel like they can talk about it is important, I think.
It's so important. I feel like it would have completely changed my experience.
Oh, thank you.
When the kids were younger. So it's crucial. And I assume everyone on this live has read The Push, but if you haven't, go get it and read it, or buy it and give it to someone as a gift, maybe a new mom, so that she knows if she's feeling a little sideways or upside down, she's not alone. Ashley, thank you so much. I'm so excited for your success. Oh my goodness.
Tracy, thank you, Tracy. I thank you to Cityline and to you. And I'm so thrilled to be your book club pick right now. It's wonderful. So thanks to everyone who read, and thanks for your support. It's really great.
And all the more millions who are still going to read it. So very excited for you.
Thank you.
Everyone stay tuned for our next Facebook Live, which I believe is happening on March 31st. We'll be talking to J.L. Richardson, and the book is Gutter Child. So that was definitely, that's a journey. If you haven't read it yet, yes.
I have it here. I have it right here. I haven't started it yet, and I'm so excited too. I'm so excited about this book. Yeah.
At the very beginning of the book, it says, protect your heart and take your time. And that is because we're in a pandemic, and this book is going to take a piece of you with you. So take your time and work your way through it, but it's so worth it. It's definitely so worth it. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks.
Everyone for joining us. See you next time.